What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today we are on the 55, just like the title says. And guys, the plan today is to get this thing on the ground with the wheels, the tires, the suspension. And why? Because we haven't coated the frame. Look, guys, here's what's going to happen. We've got to get this thing under there in order to see where our fuel lines can run, where our brake lines aren't going to interfere with anything. And then once we get all that figured out, maybe even stab the motor in at some point and transmission. But we need to know where we're going to have to cut, where we can run fuel lines and all that stuff. So I'm not ready to powder coat it yet because of all that stuff. But I did recently get it back from my painter. And guys, what he did was he closed a lot of holes that were not going to be needed on the top side of the frame just to make it look a little nicer when you open the hood. Closed out the upper A-arm mounts, so you can see that looks real nice, and then put a plate on the bottom. It's like a reinforcement plate. And then he straightened out all the crinkles that we had from, you know, this thing just being lifted over the years and whatnot. So at this point, guys, we need to get this thing in here, like I said, for measurement reasons on, you know, I got to get a fuel tank at some point and then figure out from the fuel tank how I'm going to get up to the front. Not a lot of room when we put that inner brace in there for the rear suspension. So it's one of those things, guys. I don't think people look at all the stuff that goes into building one of these cars if you're trying to like truly make it, you know, nice. But it's got to go together and come apart several times. So the goal today is to get this thing off these cinder blocks. Everybody's been giving me a hard time about how I put my cinder blocks. I get it. It's not the correct way to put them. When we take it back apart, we'll go the other way. But anyway, I want to get this frame up in here. So we've got it on some dollies. But we got some new bushings and we got some new bolts. Now, guys, look, a couple of the bolts I left in place. You can see the one that's under the carpet there, that guy, and that one there, and they're actually in pretty decent shape. So I left those, but I've got a whole bunch of new bushings and suspension parts. This is a whole kit that comes with the bolts, shims, and all the bushings. And I chose to go with rubber instead of urethane. I don't know. Guys, look, rubber seems to be quieter, but this is kind of how this works. So a majority of the mounts in this car, they set in there like this, and this kind of self-aligns. I don't know if you guys can see. This actually pushes out, but so you get this one in place, well, and then the bolt will come through, and there's another one that goes on the bottom. So kind of how this will work is this will sandwich together. And I'm going to leave the bottom ones out for now because I can go through and put those in as we go. But I need to go through and drop one of those in each one of the cradles. Now, with that being said, there is one square one out of the bunch, and the square one actually goes in the front here. So you can see the old outline from, probably need to get you guys a light down here, but that guy right there is this square one, and it goes to the mount that's on the firewall, so the front mount. So here's what I'm planning on doing. I'm gonna get my jacks, one in the front, one in the back. I'm gonna lift this thing up slowly. We'll kind of try to line these up. I gotta go through and drop these bushings in, and that's where we're gonna start. Well, I've got a pretty good start on it just with two jacks. Got a couple of them lined up. Got the front ones that were, you know, the ones that I left in. And still not pushing it up all the way yet. Just trying to get everything lined up. But what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll under there and drop some of these bolts in place. And that should give us a good start. I've got most of them snug down at this point. Guys, they're supposed to torque to 20 foot-pounds, but I didn't. I just got them hand tight. But here's our situation. You can see that the frame kind of needs to swing over just a hair. See how that's not centered? But what this does do is it's good enough where I've let some of the pressure off the jack. There's about a 1/4 inch between the jack. So we've got, you know, I feel safe under here, let's put it that way, with the two jacks and the cinder blocks. But I can kind of see where I'm going to run my fuel lines now. I'm thinking down this rail right here, down this frame rail, and then along the outside, and then I can cross over. I got plenty of room back here in the back is what I'm thinking. So like I said, you kind of got to put stuff together. And then on the brake lines, I've got ample room there. I'm not concerned about that at all. And those can actually run. I've kind of already started that. You can see my brake line that I put in, my adapter right there on the body mount. I'm going to come into that point right there, and then we'll have a, you know, basically a soft line or a flexible line that'll come back to the rear end. So now we need to grab some parts. I think I'll probably start in the front end, and we'll start assembling the front first. Now we're going to start with the upper A-arm. Just make sure you're grabbing the right one. Remember in a video a while back, I kind of showed you guys how this worked. I don't know if there's going to be any clearance issues sitting here looking at this, but guys, I am going to have to get some shims. I do not have the proper shims yet. I've got a couple, but we're going to have to shim this. So I'm not going to concern myself with necessarily tightening it up right now. And my painter did put a few protective little sleeves on there to keep from screwing anything up as far as thread wise. Let's see if we can get this thing on there. May have to go under the hood. Do it from that direction. Oh, that's way easier. Okay. As I said, what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to go ahead and run the washer, or put the washer on and run the nut down just a little bit, but I'm not going to tighten them down yet because I want to grab some shims. You guys remember how much negative camber it had? It's quite a bit. And then we'll go grab our bag and our A-arm, our lower A-arm. I'm flipping back and forth side to side. What I mean by that is I'm not going to show you guys both sides, but we need to get our lower A-arm in place. And guys, these are not the bolts I'm going to be using. Like I said, this is kind of a get everything lined up, make sure everything works type situation. There we go. I should have opened a couple of those up. Like I said, when I put this together with the frame out, it's kind of one of those deals where somebody just picked up stuff off the floor and put it together, because it is not the correct stuff. Some of them are like castle nuts and some of them aren't, but oh well. We'll get it. So there's 4 total bolts to hold the lower A-arm in, and I think probably a lock washer would be a good idea. And then unlike last time, I'm gonna try to use a air line on the bag when I put it in. I forgot to do that in the last video and ended up having to take everything back apart just to get an airline in so I could play. All right, one more bolt and then we'll go grab the bag. Now for the bag, I'm gonna do a couple things. We gotta take this T10 out of the top. And if we don't, then we won't be able to take the nut off the top, if that makes sense. So once we get that out of the way, you can see I've got an airline on there, and it's kind of pointing the way I want it to point. So how this works, see this goes underneath it, and then this whole guy goes up into place. Now, what needs to happen is we need to try to route our airline where it needs to be at the same time we're going up in there, which is sometimes easier said than done. Set this stuff over here for now. But there's a spot in the frame up here I'd like to come through if I can see it. There it is. And this is just for now. There's a little slot that I did not have him close off. Okay. And we want, generally guys, you want that airline on the inside. Okay, got that up in there. Airline's facing in. Ooh, that may not work. I'm gonna have to turn this. Let's just get it fastened for now. I'm gonna have to look in there and see about the airline. I'm gonna have to get under the car. I don't like the way it's... Actually may face it that way. All right, now I can snug this upper down, and then we'll get down here and get the bolt out of the bottom, put it in place. I got it started up top, but I haven't snugged it down yet. You can see we still got some movement. And the reason why is I want to make sure that my airline's still good. I think it is. I don't want to hit anything. I think we're good. All right, let's take this out. Got a couple washers. I left this all together. Bring this up into place. Let's see if we can get this thing in. And it doesn't necessarily matter, I don't think, whether it goes in front or back. Actually, it may. We do need to go in a certain hole though, and that would be why it won't go in. So I'm trying to go in the wrong hole. I don't know if that's just for design looks, why they put the other holes in there, because it's supposed to go in the middle one. Yeah, we're not having an issue with the airlines on the firewall side. So now that I've got that in place, I'm gonna go ahead and snug that upper down, and we'll snug this down. All right, moving on. We'll go ahead and get the spindle in place. Remember, we pre-assembled this last video. This is that spindle from CPP. It's their new Corvette spindle sealed bearing, which I love. And holds a Corvette brake right out of the gate, so you don't have to mess with trying to find a bunch of junk. You know what? Let's do it this way. Let's get this one started. We can still lift the upper. Now these right here, I don't know. I'm probably not going to tighten them up real tight. For a couple reasons. One, I don't have to knock them apart, which I'll probably have to with the amount of weight I'm going to put on it. But the other reason is you can see the A-arm's still loose up top because I got to get those shims. All right, now we got that. I guess I can move on to putting my power steering box. I'm probably not going to use the one that I showed you guys in the video. I think I'm going to order a CPP one. But for now, just so I can have it in there and see if it fits, I'll do that off camera. Guys, just using those carriage bolts, those 3 carriage bolts that goes in there. And obviously I'm going to put the spindle on the other side. Make sure you're putting the spindle on the right side. You notice the steering arm's in the back on the 55. So the next thing we're going to be putting in, if I don't hit the camera here, is our drag link and our tie rod ends and all that junk. I left it all together. Oh, there goes my camera, I told you. I left it all together because I thought it'd be easier to manage. Boy, was I wrong. Using the factory bolts for the idler arm, these carriage bolts on the passenger side. Should have probably taken those out before I came down here. We'll get this into place. And like I said, I'm not hooking up anything really. I mean, I'm hooking it up, but I'm not tightening everything, if that makes sense. So we'll get this in place, hook up the outer tie rods. I'm not gonna bolt it down to the steering box. I may just loosely thread the nut in, but we'll get this in place. And then I think we can move on to the brakes. I will tell you that after my painter made some more clearance for the frame up top here, this fits a lot better, this steering box. Now we're moving on to the brakes. These kind of ginormous used rotors. I'm probably putting the wrong one on the wrong side, but It's okay for now. We're gonna be replacing these. Probably should go ahead and order them actually. I'm using the stock bolts and washers that came with these calipers. I bought these calipers used, obviously. We're gonna have them powder coated and rebuilt. But for now, let's get them started. Get them in place. 21 millimeter is what they take. So we'll get them snug down here. And then guys, we're really, I think I may move on to the back at this point. I mean, I could go ahead and drill the hole for the sway bar. Remember in the video where I assembled this, I couldn't put the sway bar in. So I may do that, or I may just go ahead and flip to the back at this point. I also may put a couple lug nuts in here. Keep this rotor from setting in here all weird. It lines up incredibly well though. Guess I don't necessarily have to for now. Let's see if it still lines up. I think it does. Oh yeah. Golly. Great fitment. Yeah, I'm gonna think about this. Like I said, I may end up moving back to the back. I gotta go knock the one out on the other side, but we'll see what's next. Decided to move on to the sway bar since I'm up here. All right, so here's how this is set up. You got two plates that come with the air ride kit. So what you're gonna do is, remember we knocked the rivet out of the frame, but I couldn't put these on because the frame was kinked. Like I said, from some people jacking it up over the years. All right, so we've got the plate on. Where the D-ring mounts is on the inside, okay, of the frame rail. So this is the outside of the frame rail, as you can see. And so this needs to be flush. I've snugged this up where this is flush. We're gonna have to drill two holes, one here and one here, because our D-ring mount is actually gonna go through this inner structure piece. And then to mount this plate, we're gonna need it right here. So I'm drilling a 3/8 hole, and I'm using this for a guide. Let's get these holes drilled on both sides. I put both plates on, and then hopefully we can put the bolts through. Check out this. That fits really nice. So I was kind of concerned, but once I got this one drilled and it's even with the outside of the frame, I cinched them both up, and that drew it up and kind of closed out. I mean, we're really close to the ledge on this guy right here, but now I've got the washer and the bolt, and so guys, you could see kind of how the D-ring is going to set on here, and then we're going to snug it down. But for now, we need to go grab the sway bar because it actually threads in kind of awkward. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Well, I was going to do this a little differently, but I went ahead and put the bushings on. And normally, guys, you put grease, or it comes with grease to put under them. Since we're just test fitting, I'm not doing that right now, but you can see they open up on one side, you clip them over, and then this guy goes over it, and that's how it mounts. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those in place since we got the bolts in there, but then I'll show you the end link connection because that's kind of odd. Now for the sway bar end link, I did not tighten those D-rings up, guys. I just got them in place, which the back one is a little harder to get in because you're going through two pieces of frame. So, but anyway, you got some hardware here, and you have an end link, and it's different because the end link actually screws in to the end of this, and that's how it connects. A little different than I've seen before. And look, it spins inside here, so we can go ahead, use I don't know what size this is, it's standard, 9/16 to get it snugged up. I'm gonna do that real quick, and once I do both sides, I wanna do both of them, and then we'll go in at the same time. We can raise this up, and there's a couple connections that goes in. Actually, you know what? I can just do this while we're waiting. I don't know how, it doesn't say in the instructions how tight, but I would imagine snug, you know? You don't want to break anything. Now, it comes with a couple things. Lock washer, a nylock. I don't understand the nylock, but this guy right here sets, these set on both sides. And so what's gonna happen now is, if I can get it up in there, there we go, is it will go in between these two. Of course, that one fell off. Then we'll get our lock washer and our nylock, and we'll get this snugged up. Once we get that snugged up, that will kind of position, we can see where our sway bar is at, back and forth, because you may have to move it this way or that way. That's why you don't want to tighten up those D-rings up front. But once we get this into place, then we should be able to go ahead and tighten up our D-rings, tighten this up, and we'll be squared away up front. I now have both sides snugged down. I've got the D-ring snugged down. Guys, I used my rubber mallet to kind of knock the sway bar over the other direction. It was a little too far this way, but we are set up. The front is completely assembled, other than the shims and tightening up our upper A-arms, and not, like I said, tightening. I'm just snugging this stuff down. So what's next? Well, here's what I want to do. Because I've got these pieces of 4x4 underneath, and as you can see, they extend a little too far. I'm going to cut some of them off so I can get my wheel on, and we can wrap up the front, then move to the back. So that's my plan. I'm going to get my Sawzall. I'm just going to trim those off. I'm not ready to take it off of them yet. It just, to me, it's just, I've got multiple spots holding it up. So let's trim this off. Let's go grab our wheel, and we'll at least be able to see. I know it won't be on the ground, but we'll be able to see what the front looks like. Probably doesn't get any more exciting than like getting to a point where you're putting like wheels on, you know? We still gotta get those shims before I can set it down anyway, but let's see. This is the hardest wheel on the face of the planet to line up. There we go. And I'm just using some cheapy lug nuts for now. Actually, some stock F-body lug nuts, because this is a, what are they, M12 by 125, I think? I don't remember. They're metric. Well, let's move to the back. Got the wheels on. And I'll put those shims in and tighten that up later. Not as much to assemble in the back. You can see that I have managed to wrangle my rear end into here. Man, they probably wrecked my back trying, but either way, here's the plan. We need to hook up our 4-bar setup and our panhard rod. On this suspension setup, the panhard rod needs to go in first, because you can't get the nut and bolt in after you put the 4-bar setup in. So I'm going to start by just hooking all the 4-bar setup on the front side, so the leading edge, the actual piece that's welded to the frame. And then we'll worry about lifting the rear end, getting it into place, and hooking up the 4-bar to the back. But like I said, there's not quite as much here. And then we'll roll under once we get that accomplished and talk about where the bag mounts are going to go and whatnot. Well, I completely lied to you guys and told you wrong. You actually have to put the lower bar in. See that bolt where the panhard rod goes in? That lower bolt has to go in before the panhard rod. So make sure you do that. I had to take it back apart because I put the panhard rod in. But you could see we loosely have all those in place. Now all we have to do is swing the rear end up and get them hooked to the rear end. So there's not a specific way on that. I don't think, now I may be wrong on where the panhard hooks. No, there's not. Well, no, I take that back. See, you got to hook the lower bolt on the passenger side. That has to go through, and then the panhard rod can go through. So we're going to lift the rear end up, get my jack stands up a little bit, and get it hooked in there. And like, I'm not tightening any of these. We now have a couple swings on all of those. So we got the rear end hooked up with the 4-bar set up. And of course we don't have to hook the brakes up because I left them on there, but you can kind of see what we got going on here. So now what we need to do is we need to grab our bags, and our bags actually mount right there. And it's almost like installing a shock. So we're gonna have, there's a stud here on the bottom that goes in this guy on the outer section. You can adjust it if you need to. So it's literally just, like I said, like installing a shock, because it works kind of like a shock with an airbag around it. I've got the top hooked in on both sides, you can see, and obviously your adjuster needs to face out, otherwise you couldn't adjust it if it were up against the frame. Hopefully that makes sense. And right now I've got my air lines pointing backwards. To me that makes the most sense, but now we're gonna have to lift the rear end up, and we need to get this over the stud that's supplied with this kit. And I've laid it out the way it goes on. So there's a big washer, then our inner sleeve for the bottom of the shock, our outer sleeve. So that's the sleeves that most of these things get. There's 2 of those in that as well. And then another washer, and then a locking nut. So I'm gonna lift this rear end up. We're gonna get that slid onto this, and that's pretty much it. I'm not gonna snug, I'm gonna snug them down, but I'm not gonna tighten them. Now that we got everything snugged up, put in place, guys, we're done with the back. At least for now. Like I said, I don't have to assemble the brakes. There was way less to assemble back here because it was just, I kind of just rolled this thing out from under when we took this apart. So I am gonna hook up my air lines just because, you know, we gotta play with this thing when we get the wheels on. So I think I'm gonna attempt to put the wheels in place, and which means I may have to trim a little of my block over there. And then hopefully, after I get some shims in the front, we can set this thing down. Well, here's the situation that I ran into. Couldn't get the wheels off or on because the fenders on the 55 are not radiused. That makes sense. I unhooked the shocks, let it down, but it was running into the boards and the blocks. So you can see I got those out of there now. I've also got it sitting on my wheel stands in the front. I went ahead and put some shims in there, just some washers actually for now. But now I'm gonna unhook the shock and see if we can get enough suspension droop to actually get the wheel and tire in. It was running into my board, so I couldn't do that. So let's see if we can get the wheels and tires on. I hope. Got it. It's close. It's really close to this inner fender. I don't know, guys. We'll just have to see. We may have to adjust some stuff, but it's close. All right, I've got the airline hooked up just temporarily. You can see it looped around back here. I'm gonna put a little bit of air in it, and then we're gonna set it down on the ground. I'm not exactly sure if there are words to describe how excited I am about the look of this car. Guys, I have been wiping the dust off, sitting in my chair, just staring at this thing. I absolutely love the stance. I moved some stuff around so we could get a good picture and we can watch the suspension cycle. My gosh. I love it. I absolutely love it. Look at this stance. Look at it. It's been a long, long time since I've been this excited about a project in this garage. It really has. Look, I go through different bits of excitement on everything in here. You know, I'll get a wild hair on the Trans Am. We'll do some stuff on it. I'm actually still waiting on stuff, guys. So but this is kind of how it happens. You get excited about something, and it's a really close fit on the tires and wheels in the back. I'm gonna have to adjust the pan hard rod just a little bit, but I moved everything out. Like I said, I want to show you guys kind of how this suspension is gonna cycle. So I'm gonna set you right here in the middle, and I'm gonna set you on the tripod, and we will use, I've got air lines. You can see them on the bottom back there and in the front. We will cycle this and let you guys see it in action. That's all the way up. I could probably go a little further. I'm just a little leery on, I don't want to put too much air in the bags, but let's drop it back down. I don't have a quick way to do it, but you can get an idea. It's nice now that it has weight. I actually think it'll go down a little lower in the front. The control arms are hitting on the inner fenders at this point. So, I don't know, it may go down a little bit more once we trim some of that out. Exciting. Really, really exciting. Love the stance. What do you guys think? I think this is where we will end the video. You guys got to see the suspension cycle, and I'm telling you, it's, woo! I may just sit out here in the chair right there and look at it for a couple hours. It's just that cool looking to me. But we got a long ways to go on this thing. You know, it makes you feel good when you get a little bit accomplished. We still got to pull that frame back out and get it powder coated at some point. We got to run fuel lines. We got to get the motor and trans in there. I don't know, guys. We may end up having to cut the floor a little bit to clear the transmission. But look, I may just let it sit here for a little bit while we do some other stuff and I gather more parts. But let me know what you guys think in the comments of this thing. I am excited, as you can tell. So if you did enjoy this video, guys, please, like always, smash that thumbs up button. If you are not subscribed, you got to get subscribed, because we are going to be doing stuff on this and everything else in this shop. Of course, like always, ring that bell notification. That notifies you every single time we drop a video on this or anything else. And stay tuned to see what we work on next.